They told you that if you wanted love, you had to earn it. So you believed them. You showed up every time. You texted first. You planned the dates. You adjusted your schedule. You gave more energy, more attention, more effort than you ever received back. You told yourself that consistency would be rewarded, that patience would be noticed, that if you just proved how serious you were, she would eventually choose you. But something strange kept happening. The more you gave, the more she pulled away. The more available you became, the less interested she seemed. The more you tried to secure her, the faster she drifted. At first, you didn't question it. You assumed the problem was you. Maybe you weren't charming enough. Maybe you said the wrong things. Maybe you needed to be more romantic, more attentive, more understanding. So you doubled down. You gave even more. And that's when it got worse. Because kindness alone didn't save you. Consistency didn't anchor her. Even becoming the best version of yourself didn't change the outcome. In her eyes, you became predictable, easy, always there, always willing. And no one ever told you this truth. What is easily gained is rarely deeply valued. Machiavelli didn't write about dating or romance. He wrote about power. But power doesn't disappear just because the setting changes. His insights echo quietly through the frustration of men who chase too hard and wonder why attraction slips through their fingers. He once said, "It is far safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." And fear, in this context, has nothing to do with aggression or cruelty. It means presence, weight, the kind of gravity that commands attention without asking for it. The kind of presence that doesn't beg to be chosen. Most men lose their edge the moment they start seeking validation instead of direction. The moment their focus shifts from building their own path to orbiting someone else's approval. When you make her the center of your world instead of inviting her into one you've already built, something subtle but powerful changes. Women aren't drawn to desperation. They're drawn to gravity, to restraint, to silence, to a man who can look them in the eye and say, without saying it out loud, "I want you here, but I will never need you to complete me." This isn't about playing games. It isn't manipulation. It's transformation. A shift from chasing to attracting, from performing to leading, from proving to embodying. Because the moment you stop trying to convince her of your worth is the moment she starts wondering why she ever needed convincing in the first place. In this video, you're going to learn 5 timeless shifts. 5 principles rooted in Machiavellian clarity and masculine discipline. They won't just change how women see you. They'll change how you see yourself. So, if you're tired of the chase, if you're done handing your power to people who never earned it, don't just listen passively. Lean in. Absorb this. And when something inside you feels heavy and calm at the same time, follow it. Because that feeling is recognition. Every man knows this sting. You meet a woman who excites you. You show up fully. You give your best. You offer effort, consistency, emotional availability. You're honest. You're present. And then she fades. She replies slower. She cancels plans. She grows distant. At first, you blame yourself. You replay conversations in your head. You wonder what you did wrong. You ask yourself if you were too much or somehow not enough. But here's the brutal truth most men never hear. It wasn't what you gave. It was what your giving revealed. Machiavelli once wrote that men judge more by the eye than by the hand. People don't evaluate who you truly are at your core. They respond to what you appear to be, to the energy you project. And what did you appear to be? Always available, always eager, always reachable. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself this. In a world where attention floods her phone every day, what does availability actually signal? Strength or submission? When attention is everywhere, abundance doesn't stand out. Scarcity does. Presence that must be earned, not presence that is handed out freely. The man who overgives early doesn't signal depth. He signals hunger, and hunger repels far more than it attracts. Real value doesn't chase, it anchors. It doesn't need to pursue constantly to prove itself. It commands space simply by existing. Let's make this painfully clear. The man who texts constantly, adjusts his schedule instantly, always says yes, always makes himself available. He's not building connection. He's erasing mystery. And when mystery disappears, attraction quietly dies. But the man who moves differently, the man who doesn't rush to reply, who doesn't drop his life to earn approval, who remains focused on his path regardless of who enters his orbit, that man becomes rare. And rarity is magnetic. Women don't chase availability, they chase significance. Here's the real shift. The moment you stop placing her at the center of your universe, you give her a reason to wonder where your gravity truly lies. Imagine two men. The first man waits on her. He's always ready, always eager. She texts. He replies instantly. She cancels. He forgives immediately. His life rearranges around her mood. The second man doesn't play games. He isn't cold, but he's building something. His life is full. Not busy, full. He responds with clarity, not urgency. He gives time, but he never chases it. Which man does she lean toward? Which man makes her pause? Which one creates tension, curiosity, desire? It isn't about coldness. It's about depth. It's about being a man who lives in a world she wants to step into, not a man who abandons his world just to stand inside hers. This is why your mission matters. This is why your habits matter. This is why discipline and personal growth aren't optional. Every time you chase her, you send a silent message. You are more important than my purpose. And nothing drains masculine energy faster than that lie. Even if she never says it out loud, a man who gives away all his time feels empty. No boundaries, no standard, no center. Machiavelli warned that constant exposure breeds contempt. Influence fades when presence becomes predictable. In dating, this translates simply: let her feel your absence, not to punish, not to manipulate, but to remind. Your attention is earned, not owed. When she doesn't hear from you instantly, curiosity begins. When you don't show up on demand, tension forms. And inside that tension, desire grows. You don't withdraw love. You invest it wisely into your body, your craft, your legacy. Because when your time becomes valuable to you, it becomes valuable to her. You train, you build, you sharpen your mind, and when you do engage with her, you do it from abundance, not lack. You're not hoping she fills a void. You're offering a window into a life that's already whole, and in that shift, everything changes. She leans in. She reaches out. She begins to invest. Not because you played games, but because you stopped playing yourself. So ask yourself this: if she had to earn your time the same way you earn your own, would she qualify? This is the paradox of attraction. The moment you stop chasing is the moment she begins to wonder what makes you so hard to catch. And when she wonders, she values. From this moment forward, become the man whose time must be earned, not through manipulation, through presence, purpose, power. Because the man who builds himself first never begs to be chosen. He waits and lets the right woman choose to follow. There's something more dangerous than rejection, more silent than betrayal. more powerful than a yes or a no. Indifference. And indifference doesn't begin when she says she's not interested. It begins the moment she thinks she already knows everything about you. When there's nothing left to uncover, nothing left to explore, nothing left to wonder about. Because mystery isn't just attractive, it's essential. Think about every story that's ever held your attention, the books you couldn't put down, the movies that stayed in your mind long after the credits rolled. What kept you hooked wasn't the ending, it was the unknown, the tension between what was revealed and what was still hidden. Curiosity is the engine of desire, and yet most men sabotage their own story before it even begins. They meet a woman they like and immediately feel the pressure to impress. So they unload everything, their goals, their struggles, their past wounds, their fears, their intentions, all within the first few conversations. They believe this is honesty. They call it being open. They think vulnerability, delivered all at once, proves depth. What they don't realize is this. They've just handed her the final chapter. And when a story ends too soon, the reader puts the book down. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He warned that a man who reveals all his intentions becomes predictable, and the predictable man is easy to defeat, not because he's weak, but because there's no tension left, no uncertainty, no pull. In dating, predictability kills attraction faster than rejection ever could. This doesn't mean you lie. It doesn't mean you play characters or hide who you are. It means you understand timing. It means you protect depth instead of dumping it on the table for approval. Because when everything is revealed too early, nothing feels earned. And what isn't earned is rarely cherished. Let's make this clear. Mystery is not manipulation. It's restraint. You are not a vending machine that dispenses intimacy on demand. You are a vault, and the more effort it takes to unlock you, the more valuable what's inside becomes. Picture two men. The first man wears his heart on his sleeve. He shares every scar immediately. He over-explains his feelings. He fills every silence. He tries to fast-track intimacy because he's afraid that if he doesn't, she'll lose interest. He calls it authenticity. But what he's really doing is bleeding his soul onto someone who hasn't earned access to it. He's like a documentary, informative, honest, but forgettable. The second man moves differently. He's warm. He's present. He listens, but he's measured. He shares truth without oversharing. He lets moments breathe. He doesn't rush to be understood. He's grounded, comfortable in silence, certain of who he is whether she validates him or not. She leaves the conversation not knowing everything, but wanting to know more. That's the man she thinks about later. That's the man she texts again. That's the man who lingers in her mind. Because desire is born in discovery, and discovery can't exist if there's nothing left to uncover. We live in a world that overshares constantly. Every thought posted, every emotion broadcast, every insecurity announced publicly. In that environment, privacy becomes power. Machiavelli believed that the more hidden a man's intentions, the stronger his influence. Not because he was deceptive, but because he was unreadable. And unreadable doesn't mean confusing, it means captivating. It means you don't hand your blueprint to just anyone. So ask yourself honestly, why do you share so quickly? Is it to build trust? Or is it fear? Fear that if you don't impress her right now, you'll lose your chance. Fear that if you don't explain yourself, she won't understand you. Fear that silence means loss. That fear is loud, and it leaks into your energy. Silence, on the other hand, is strong. Stillness is rare. The man who holds back, who reveals himself layer by layer, who allows curiosity to grow instead of rushing clarity, he becomes unforgettable. Because every new truth he reveals feels earned, like a reward, like access granted, not content consumed. That is Intimacy, not forced closeness, earned closeness. So how do you live this? You stop offering your entire soul on the first night. You protect your energy. You share selectively. You let your actions speak louder than your explanations. You don't text constant updates about your day. You don't explain every shift in your mood. You don't unload your past before trust is built. Not because you're hiding, but because you're whole. Whole enough not to need someone else to fix you. Whole enough to let someone walk beside you without demanding they carry your weight. You give her curiosity, and curiosity fuels attraction. You don't speak just to fill silence. You allow silence to speak for you. Because in a world drowning in noise, the man who speaks with intention becomes magnetic. Remember this: the more she has to wonder, the more she invests. The more she invests, the more she values. Machiavelli would say that a wise man hides his intent not to deceive, but to remain ungoverned. To stay sovereign, let her feel like she's unlocking a vault, not scrolling through a diary. Because the man who is mysterious isn't distant. He's unforgettable. There's something magnetic about a man who doesn't flinch. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't chase reassurance. He doesn't react just because tension appears. He observes, he breathes, he stays centered, and in that stillness, he becomes powerful. Most men never learn this. Control isn't dominance, it's emotional discipline. And emotional discipline is what separates the man she respects from the man she eventually leaves. Machiavelli warned that a man who cannot govern his passions will soon be governed by others. That's not just about leadership. It's about attraction. It's about power dynamics. Women don't test you to hurt you. They test you to see what you're made of. Can you stay calm when plans change? Can you hold your ground when tension rises? Can you remain steady when your ego feels threatened? Because if you can't control yourself, you can't protect anything else. Not emotionally, not energetically, not spiritually. Most men collapse under pressure. They get ghosted and spiral. One dry reply sends them into panic. They try to force reassurance. They over-text. They explain. They plead without realizing they are. And every time they do that, they reveal something fatal. Their center isn't rooted. Their identity depends on her response. That kind of power is reactive, not sovereign, and it kills attraction. What she feels, even if she can't articulate it, is your stability, your groundedness, your ability to remain unshaken. She doesn't want perfection. She wants presence, a presence that doesn't disappear under pressure. The man who can sit with discomfort without rushing to fix it becomes rare. And in a chaotic world, rarity is irresistible. Think about it. She goes quiet for a few hours. The anxious man panics. He assumes the worst. He sends messages to fill the gap. He loses sleep over uncertainty. The grounded man returns to his life, his training, his work, his peace. Her absence doesn't shake him. It sharpens him. He responds intentionally, not emotionally. And that is masculine power in its purest form. Intensity isn't depth. Volume isn't strength. Speed isn't clarity. Sometimes the real power is in the pause before you speak, the pause before you chase, the pause before you lose yourself. Because in that pause you reclaim control, not over her, over you. And once a man controls himself, no one else can control him. That's where real attraction begins. When you become unshakable, something subtle happens. She feels it. Not in a dramatic way. Not like a movie scene. It's quieter than that. She notices how steady your voice is, how relaxed your energy stays, how you don't scramble to fix every little shift in the dynamic, how you don't get pulled into chaos just because chaos shows up. And even if she can't explain it, she can feel it. Because masculinity isn't proven by controlling other people. It's proven by mastery of self. So the next time your heart races, remember this. Don't act. Don't burn. Don't explain. Breathe. Anchor. Return to center. A man who stays calm under pressure doesn't demand love. He attracts it through presence. And that leads us into a truth most men hate hearing. But it changes everything. You can't be loved deeply until you're respected fully. A lot of men chase love like it's the prize. They chase affection. They chase approval. They chase comfort. And while they're doing that, they slowly let respect slip through their fingers. They tolerate late replies. They excuse subtle disrespect. They accept hot and cold behavior. They laugh off little digs. They keep showing up even when they're not being valued. They call it understanding. They call it patience. They tell themselves, if I stay calm, if I stay kind, she'll eventually recognize how good I am. But here's the truth. Every time you let disrespect slide, you don't look noble, you look weak. Machiavelli warned that if you do not command respect, you invite betrayal. And betrayal doesn't always arrive as cheating or abandonment. Sometimes it arrives as erosion, quiet, slow, almost invisible. It starts small. She cancels last minute. She mocks something important to you. She flirts with attention in front of you. She tests how far she can push. And you smile through it. You say, it's fine. But inside you feel something shrinking. The part of you that once had weight. The part of you that once had standards. You think you're avoiding conflict. But what you're really doing is erasing yourself. Because here's the hard reality. If you never draw the line, she'll never know where it is. And when there's no line, there's no gravity, no pull, no weight, no reason to stay. Respect isn't given for being easy. Respect is earned by being clear. A lot of men confuse peacekeeping with strength. They think being low drama means tolerating anything. They think being agreeable means being solid. But true strength is calm and precise. It says, I don't need to raise my voice, but I will not accept this. Not to punish her, not to manipulate her, but to protect the core of who you are. Because if you don't protect your standard, you don't have one. And if you don't have one, you become forgettable. Here's what most men miss. A woman doesn't test you because she's evil. She tests you because she's trying to feel something solid. She wants to know if you have a spine. She wants to know if you can lead the dynamic. She wants to know if you're a man or a placeholder. And every time you smile through disrespect, you confirm her suspicion. You can be pushed. You can be molded. You can be broken. But when you hold firm, when you correct gently but clearly, when you look her in the eye and say, that's not okay with me, something shifts. Not dominance. Direction. Not control. Clarity. And clarity creates trust. Because in a world full of men who bend, adjust, chase, and apologize for their own needs, the one who stays grounded becomes unforgettable. So, how do you embody this? You decide what matters to you and you hold it with calm, with presence, without apology. If she mocks something sacred to you, you don't laugh with her. You don't try to win the moment back with humor. You simply say, steady and direct. I don't joke about things that define me. If she cancels last minute again and again, you don't chase another plan. You step back. You let her reach. You let her show you that she values your time. And if she crosses a hard boundary, you don't explode. You exit. You don't throw a fit. You don't beg. You don't argue. You walk away with grace. Because the man who walks away without shouting walks with power. Real masculinity isn't about being liked. It's about being respected. And the man who is respected will always be loved more deeply than the one who is merely liked. Machiavelli would remind you that a ruler who fears upsetting others will soon lose his throne. And as a man, your throne is your self-respect, your time, your energy, your peace. If you trade those away just to keep her comfortable, you will lose her anyway, because she may enjoy the power for a while. But desire doesn't survive where respect is missing. So draw your lines, not with anger, with integrity. Speak them, live them, enforce them quietly. Because when you know your limits, you teach the world, including her, how to treat you. And when she feels that, she sees you differently. Not as a boy chasing comfort, but as a man with a backbone. Now let's go deeper, because this is where many men truly lose themselves. A man who loses his mission will always become a servant to someone else's. And it usually doesn't start with chains. It starts with love. He falls for her, and slowly, without noticing, he begins to adjust. He compromises little things at first. He skips the gym to hang out. He postpones a goal to keep her happy. He stops doing what he loves because she doesn't get it. He gives more time, more attention, more energy, until one day, he looks in the mirror and doesn't recognize the man staring back. His hobbies abandoned, his goals delayed, his fire dimmed. And he tells himself it's noble. He tells himself that's what being a good man means, that real love requires sacrifice. But here's the bitter truth. If you sacrifice your freedom to keep a woman, you will lose her anyway. Because no woman, no matter what she says, wants to be the center of your universe. She wants to be part of a man's world, not the world. Machiavelli said that a prince must always rule his domain. If he does not, someone else will. As a man, your domain is your direction, your mission, your sovereignty. And if you hand that away, you don't just lose your edge, you lose her respect. Because when she met you, you had something. You had momentum. You had fire. You had a life that moved. That's what attracted her. But the moment you orbit her instead of building your world, that energy begins to die. And she feels it. Not as love, as regression. She may never say it out loud, but something in her pulls back because the man she was drawn to, the man with purpose, has vanished. You became available, but you stopped being valuable. Here's the paradox. A woman doesn't fall in love because you need her. She falls when she sees you don't. Not because you're cold, but because you're whole. And when you're whole, your love becomes a choice, not a dependency. And nothing is more powerful than a man who chooses her without ever needing to lose himself in the process. So, how do you preserve your sovereignty? You keep building. Even when she says, "Why don't we relax more?" you stay disciplined. Even when she wants more of your time, you maintain your rhythm. Even when she tries to slow you down, you keep moving. Not out of ego, out of duty. Because your path matters, your discipline matters, your vision matters. She is not the reason you wake up. Your purpose is. And here's the magic. When you live like this, you attract a different kind of woman. Not the one who wants to control you. The one who respects your movement. The one who supports your growth. The one who finds her place, not above your purpose, but beside it. And if she can't do that, if she needs you to shrink to keep her comfortable, you let her go. Not with anger, with grace. Because you no longer trade freedom for affection. That era is over. You are no longer the man who abandons his future just to be accepted in the present. You are no longer the man who shrinks so someone else can feel bigger. You are the man who walks his path without apology. And if someone wants to walk beside you, they rise to your level. You don't descend to meet theirs. That is what it means to be sovereign. Machiavelli never glorified romance. He glorified clarity, strategy, discipline. And the most strategic thing a man can do is refuse to surrender his mission for the comfort of temporary closeness. Because the moment you lose your edge, you lose the gravity that once pulled her in. So you keep moving, you keep building, you keep sharpening yourself, not to impress her, but because that's who you are. And when she sees that, when she realizes you would rather lose her than lose yourself, something shifts inside her. That's when respect deepens. That's when attraction stabilizes. That's when she chooses you not out of convenience, but out of awe. Because the man who remains sovereign, who refuses to trade his fire for false peace, doesn't need to chase love. He commands it by becoming the kind of man no one wants to lose. Here's where most men finally understand the truth they were never taught. Attraction isn't something you pursue. It's something you create. Not through effort, but through essence. Not by proving, but by becoming. You don't win her by chasing. You win her by stopping the chase. By choosing presence over panic. Stillness over performance. Silence over desperation. No one told you this growing up. The man who commands love doesn't beg for it. He becomes impossible to ignore. Not because he's flashy, not because he's smooth, not because he's constantly available, but because he's grounded. He has direction. He has standards. He has a life that doesn't collapse just because someone walks away. He refuses to abandon himself just to be liked. That man doesn't speak just to be heard. He speaks because his silence already carries weight. He doesn't show up everywhere. He shows up intentionally. And when a woman meets a man like this, she feels it immediately. She feels the density of his presence. She feels the edge in his restraint. She feels the clarity in his energy, and it forces a choice. She either rises to meet him, or she walks away. And if she walks away, so be it. Because your worth was never measured by who stayed. It's measured by what you refuse to lose just to keep them. This is the core of Machiavellian wisdom. Control is not taken. It's maintained. Power is not loud. It's composed. Influence is not forced. It's earned. Earned through clarity, through restraint, through discipline. So let's ground this. Let's make it practical. If you strip everything down, there are 5 principles that shape everything you've heard so far. First, build your value. Then let her come to you. Not with words, with action. Not by chasing, by anchoring into your own life, your routines, your standards, your direction. Second, protect mystery. Let her earn access. Let her uncover you layer by layer. Because what is uncovered slowly is valued deeply. Depth doesn't need to announce itself. Third, master your emotions. Stay still when others collapse. Stay calm when tension rises, because your calm becomes your gravity. Fourth, draw your lines. Expect respect without yelling, without threats, without drama. Calm strength is more intimidating than anger ever will be. And fifth, protect your freedom. Stay sovereign. Because your purpose is not a side note in your life. It is the headline. And no relationship should ever replace it. This isn't manipulation. This isn't mind games. This is maturity. This is masculine energy refined. Not through bravado, through mastery. From now on, you don't chase clarity. You create it. You don't explain your worth. You embody it. You stop asking, what do I need to do to make her stay? And you start asking a better question. Is she strong enough to walk beside who I truly am? Because love built on performance always collapses. Eventually, the mask slips. The energy drains. The resentment builds. But love built on truth lasts. And if she can't meet you where you stand, let her go. Let her walk. Because the man you are becoming, the man you've always been beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the need to please, does not chase. He stands. He leads. He commands. And if this message stirred something inside you, if you felt that quiet clarity settle in your chest, don't ignore it. That feeling is alignment. From this point forward, you are not the man who performs for approval. You are not the man who waits to be chosen. You are not the man who hands over his crown for crumbs of affection. You are the man who walks his path even when it means walking alone. And because of that, you never walk empty. You don't beg for love. You don't compete for attention. You command it by mastering yourself. That is what makes you unforgettable. But there is one final layer, one final truth that ties everything together. Because even men who understand all of this sometimes fall back into old patterns. Why? Because they confuse solitude with loss. They confuse walking alone with failure. And they forget that the most powerful men in history were never surrounded by constant validation. They were surrounded by purpose. Loneliness isn't weakness. Dependence is. A man who cannot stand alone will always cling, and a man who clings will always be controlled. When you become comfortable in your own presence, when you enjoy your own silence, you stop negotiating your value. You stop explaining yourself to people who haven't earned the right to understand you. You stop bending just to avoid being alone. And that changes everything. Because now, when you choose someone, it's not from fear, it's from strength. Your relationships stop being emotional crutches and start becoming conscious choices. And women feel that difference immediately. They feel when they're being chosen, not needed. They feel when your presence is offered, not demanded. They feel when your attention has weight behind it. This is why men who are whole attract healthier dynamics. Not because they're perfect, but because they're grounded. They don't need chaos to feel alive. They don't need constant reassurance to feel secure. They don't need to chase to feel worthy. They know who they are, and that certainty is rare. In a world of men who over-explain, over-give, and overextend, the man who stays centered becomes magnetic. So remember this as you move forward. Your job is not to convince anyone of your value. Your job is to live in alignment with it. Build your life. Protect your standards. Master your emotions. Guard your mission. And let the rest respond. Because the man who becomes solid in himself doesn't need to hunt attraction. Attraction finds him. This is where everything comes together. Because once you stop chasing, once you stop explaining, once you stop shrinking to be chosen, something fundamental shifts inside you. You no longer move from fear. You no longer move from urgency. You move from alignment. And alignment is power. Attraction was never about tactics. It was never about timing texts or saying the perfect thing. It was always about who you are when no one is watching. About the life you return to when she goes quiet. About whether your center holds when attention disappears. Most men are only confident when they are desired. The sovereign man is confident even when he is alone. That's the difference. When you can sit in silence without reaching for distraction, when you can walk your path without needing applause, you stop broadcasting need. And need is the one signal that weakens everything. You don't become distant. You become dense. Your presence carries weight because it's not begging to be acknowledged. This is why the man who can walk away calmly is the most dangerous man in the room. Not dangerous in violence, but dangerous in leverage. Because he cannot be controlled through fear of loss. He already owns himself. And here's the final truth most men never hear clearly enough. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. If you are anxious, you attract instability. If you are empty, you attract distraction. If you are grounded, you attract respect. So the work is not out there, it's here. You build your body, so discipline lives in your nervous system. You build your craft, so competence replaces insecurity. You build your mission, so direction silences doubt. And slowly, without forcing it, your energy changes. You stop chasing clarity because your life already has it. You stop seeking validation because your standards give it to you. You stop fearing loss because nothing essential is outsourced anymore. This is when relationships change. Women stop testing you constantly because they feel structure. They stop pulling away to regain power because power is no longer being handed over. They stop seeing you as replaceable because you are no longer positioning yourself as available to anyone. Not arrogant, not cold, just rooted. And if someone doesn't like that version of you, you don't negotiate. You don't explain. You don't perform. You let them go. Because loss no longer feels like punishment. It feels like alignment correcting itself. This is what Machiavellian clarity looks like when applied to modern life. Not manipulation, but self-rule. Not control of others, but command of self. You protect your time because it's finite. You protect your energy because it's sacred. You protect your mission because it's irreplaceable. And when love enters your life, it enters as an addition, not a rescue. You don't need someone to complete you. You allow someone to accompany you. That distinction changes everything. So from this point forward, stop asking how to be chosen. Ask how to be unshakable. Ask how to be so aligned with your path that whether someone stays or leaves does not alter your direction. Because the man who cannot be moved is the man who is felt. He doesn't demand love. He doesn't compete for attention. He doesn't chase desire. He becomes the standard others measure themselves against. And that is the quiet power no one taught you. Not loud, not flashy, not desperate, just solid. When you live from that place, attraction stops being something you worry about. It becomes something that follows. And that is the moment you stop chasing forever. So let this be the line you draw in your life. From this moment on, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop bending your standards just to keep someone close. You stop mistaking attention for connection and approval for love. You understand now that real attraction is not created by effort alone, but by identity. You don't need to prove that you're valuable. You need to live like you already are. When you wake up each day anchored in purpose, when your actions reflect discipline instead of desperation, when your silence carries more weight than your explanations, people feel it. Women feel it. The world responds to it. Not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. Some people will drift away when you change like this. Let them. They were only comfortable with the version of you that needed them. The moment you stop needing, the dynamic shifts, and not everyone can rise with you. That's not loss, that's filtration. What remains is alignment, calm, direction, self-respect. And from that place, love stops being a battlefield. It becomes a meeting point. Two whole individuals choosing each other, not clinging, not chasing, not performing. Remember this above all else. The man who fears being alone will always be controlled by the fear of losing. But the man who is comfortable in his own presence cannot be moved, rushed, or manipulated. He walks forward regardless. He builds regardless. He leads regardless. And when someone walks beside him, it's because they earned that place, not because he begged them to stay. That is power. That is freedom. That is the man you are becoming.